On behalf of Akuno Senko for Bay, you know what I'm saying? Jay, where you at? We're trying to help our people elevate. Hope. H-O-P-E. We're giving them hope. We doing what we gotta do, you know? Every day, one step at a time, man. We gonna make it happen. Helping our people elevate. Yeah. Sometimes I practice, focus, thought, and meditate. I'm trying to come with other ways to help our people elevate and seeking knowledge, make me levitate. The lifted mental state is what results from how we orchestrate. This for the family's sake. Let's self-reflect and self-evaluate. And every day, make sure the steps you take, you calculate. Receive a master's fate. I know I can't exist without the hate, but that's okay. I balance that with higher self today. Success is on this way, and after that, my flesh can pass away.
I'm still looking forward to it. Islam.
I appreciate it. And so we're gonna go. How do I get this? How do I? Oh, right here. Okay. Can y'all see the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is part 3 of the Fathers of the Modern Race Paradigm, and we're going to talk about stripping the Moors of their land, identity, resources, and estate. And this is from the Helping Our People Elevate study class presented by Akuno Sankofa Bay. And like I said, I appreciate y'all for being here. And so I want to start with our massive ignorance is the source of European power, which fuels our political disunity, operating the knowledge in a political structure. And so, as they were talking about last night in Kwasi's class, it's our lack of the information that keeps those in power, or those who control the language control those who use it. So it's our lack of this information, and is what keeps us in dysfunction, or keeps us in that's the word I'm looking for. Well, it wasn't, but
You can move right there. Why give me a thing like this? It's right there. The red mission. You don't see nothing on the bed?
No.
as I said, those who control the language control those who use it. That's Francis Bernier, Carlos Linnaeus, and Johann Friedrich Blumenbach. Francis Bernier is a new division of the earth, or Nouvelle de la Terre, according to the different species of races of men, was published in 1684, where he distinguished 5 human types: white, black, red, brown, and yellow, or white, black, red, yellow, brown. Let me get this off of here so I can see. In Carlos Linnaeus' 10th edition of Systemae Naturae in 1758, he originally classified humans as Homo sapiens. Johann Friedrich Blumenbach is the father, or is who defined Caucasians as white. Johann Friedrich Blumenbach proposes racial classification in his book On the Natural Varieties of Mankind in 1775. And so in part 1, part 2, and part 3, y'all will hear me talking about Johann Friedrich Blumenbach, Carlos Linnaeus, and Francis Bernier, and why they are important. We will dive into that and more. But in this one, we're going to talk about culture, ancestry, and identity. How the culture was stripped from us, how our ancestral lineage, how we do not have, we don't know our connection to our ancestry, to our land, our resources, our estate, and how our identity was stolen from Moor, the Black, Negro, Colored, African American, etc. We're going to start with Melville Herskovits. He created the genocidal lie of the Moors, so-called American Negroes, coming from African slaves, only changing their cultural identity between 1940s and 1960s. In class 2, I had talked about his 6 books that he had published. And Melville Herskovits was also the father of African studies that we use in the universities today in schools. So what was Melville Herskovits known for? Melville Jean Herskovits, born September 10th, 1895, he passed on February 25th of 1963, was an anthropologist who helped the first establish African and African diaspora studies in American Academy. He is known for exploring the cultural continuity from African culture as expressed in African American communities. Again, he is the father of the African studies and social and classes that we use in school today. This is the man that came with the African American studies or the African studies in the schools today. Melville Herskovits, the anthropologist who published 6 books: The Economic Life of Primitive People, The Myth of Negro Past, Man and His Works, Continuity and Change in African Culture, The Human Factor in Changing Africa, and The Economic Transition in Africa. Those were the 6 books he published. And in 1948, he established a program of African studies and became its first director. What was Herskovits' theory? Herskovits was the first prominent Caucasian intellectual to declare that Black culture, again, that's Francis Bonner, but Black culture in America was not pathological. All right, Brother John, can you mute your mic, bro? Herskovits was the first prominent Caucasian intellectual to declare that Black culture in America was not pathological, but rather inherently African, and that it had to be viewed within that context. So the out of Africa concept, he was the one that said any one of melanated skin all come from one location. So this is why a lot of people say that we can't claim to be indigenous to this land, is because he is the author of those books. That's the subjugation, the decolonizing, the denationalizing. He's one of them. I'm saying he's one of the many. Our resources.
All right, get your bacon head cheese.
Y'all ever heard of Walter Plecker? Maybe some have, maybe some haven't.
No, I haven't heard of him. You
haven't?
No, this is the first time.
Okay, well, Walter Plecker was the eugenist who took away the Moor/American Negro Indians' resources and gave it to the descendants of European settlers of various nationalities, such as Italians, Irish, French, British, Dutch, etc. And so Walter Plecker was the one who gave our resources away. The Racial Integrity Act of 1924, an attack on indigenous identity. Plecker ordered state agencies to reclassify Moors who claimed American Indian identity as colored, although many Virginian Native Americans continued to live in their communities and maintain their tribal practices. Church records, for instance, continue to identify them as Native Americans. And so this is why you can look at a lot of our ancestry records, and you see a lot of our ancestors had the tribes in them: Creek, Cherokee, Choctaw, Seminole, etc., all these different tribes. But we were reclassified, again, the colored system. This is another Francis Bonner. So Walter Plecker also took on Francis Bonner's concept of reclassifying us as colored. What is the Virginia Reclassification Act? This act banned interracial marriage by requiring marriage applicants to identify their race. Also, race is another Francis Bonner, as white, colored, or mixed. The law defined as a white person as one with no trace of the blood of another race. The law did stipulate that persons who have 1/16 or less of the blood of the American Indian would. I didn't put the other piece on there, so I didn't put the other piece on there, so I'm gonna just keep going. Those who control the language control those who use it. Francis Bonner, Carlos Linnaeus, and Johann Friedrich Blumenbach. Anybody want to read this?
Yeah, I'll read it. The eugenics is the practice of controlling reproduction to alter the genetic characteristics of a population. Some advocates of eugenics believe that the methods like selective breeding and sterilization would benefit human society by promoting beneficial traits. But who decides which traits are desirable and which are undesirable? Historically, eugenics has been used to justify white supremacy, resulting in discriminatory policies and heinous practice like forced sterilization.
So you had breeding farms or like the forced sterilization. What was that? I believe it was it syphilis? No, it's not syphilis. What they get? What was they getting, brothers on the planes? Tag nabbit, I can't think of it.
It was syphilis. You talking about the Hrdlicka? You talking about that? When they was giving them brothers syphilis and they was testing them?
Yeah, yeah, forced sterilization.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So and they also like I said, the breeding farms, the syphilis, and they use these acts to justify what's the Planned Parenthood, selective breeding and sterilization. And so it was the control of the population. It was a way of genocide. One of the act's main proponents was a physician named Walter Ashby Plecker. As the head of Virginia's Bureau of Vital Statistics from 1912 to 1946. Then when we deal with the identity, how they've changed the image from the original dark images that we saw or that we see, like when you look at the mounds or any other ancient artifacts, ancient images, you see these dark-skinned images. Well, now we see today's modern natives, and how did these people become? And so we're going to deal with the identity and Hrdlicka. He studied medicine and practiced briefly until he left for Paris in 1896 to study anthropology with L.P. Manauver. I believe I said that right. Later that year, he returned to the United States and became an associate in anthropology in New York Pathological Institute. He is recognized as the eugenist who changed the picture of the Moors from dark-skinned images to pale, as reflected as evidence throughout Europe, from so-called Negro Indians to Mongol Asians. So yeah, going back, I mean, like you've seen the artifacts in Europe across the world. You see all the dark images of the ancient Moors, the ancient paintings, and all that. And so, Alex Hrdlicka was the one who changed the images from the dark skin to the pale as we see today. Anybody want to take a shot at this one?
Yeah, I'll read it. Somebody got to mute themselves. Who that, James?
Yeah, brother James.
You know how to mute them now since you the host? Okay, there you go. The Myth of the Negro Past is a seminal work by anthropologist Melville
Herskovits,
published in 1941. In this book, Herskovits challenged the prevailing belief that Moors in the Americas had been culturally blank slates upon their arrival in the Americas as slaves, arguing instead that they retained significant elements of their African cultural heritage. He conducted extensive research on African cultures and the cultural practices of the Moors in the Americas, demonstrating the continuity of the African cultural traditions in the New World. Hrdlicka, how you say it again?
Hrdlicka.
Hrdlicka's work played a crucial role in shifting the academic discourse on the Moor American culture and identity, emphasizing the importance of understanding the indigenous roots of the Moor American cultural practices.
And so, a lot of their readings, they say that we were savages. We didn't know how to read. We were unintelligent. We were just lost people. And so, Melville Hrdlicka was a part of that concept that we didn't know anything. We were savages, and so he also is the father, like I said, the father of the out of Africa concept, and he was also a part of the shifting the science of the
do that. Go up and get the ice and bring it down in the morning time. Since they're gonna do
But
it.
they don't start till 9, so
Yeah.
and they're
Time.
working on the room in the morning.
Okay.
So like she's.
Are you unmuted, Pacola?
I got you.
So
Okay. All right, yeah. So the myth of the Negro past. I'm gonna have to go through his books. I was going over one of them earlier today. But I want to go ahead.
Walter Plecker was a prominent figure in the United States who served as the first registrar of Virginia's Bureau of Vital Statistics, a position he held from 1912 to 1946. Plecker was a staunch advocate of eugenics and racial purity, and he implemented policies aimed at enforcing racial segregation and preventing interracial marriages. One of Plecker's controversial actions was his efforts to reclassify Moors of Native American and Mexican descent as colored or Negro in official records. He believed in a strict binary racial classification system, and he sought to eradicate any acknowledgement of Moor American or Indigenous ancestry among individuals he considered African.
Melville Hrdlicka. And so again, these Walter Plecker and Alex Hrdlicka, they both took on Francis Bernard, Carlos Linnaeus, and Johann Friedrich Blumenbach's ideologies. He reclassified the Moors or the Indigenous Native American or Indigenous Americans as colored or Negro in official records. And he also wanted to make sure that to eradicate any acknowledgments or to erase any acknowledgement of the Moors in the Americas. He wanted to erase all that knowledge and that he considered African. So that goes back to him accepting the Melville Hrdlicka's ideology. He took on that concept. As I said, Francis Bernard, Carlos Linnaeus, Johann Friedrich Blumenbach, those who control the language control those who use it.
You said one started using African. You said
Melville Hrdlicka. He's the father of the African studies that we use in the school system today.
Mm-hmm.
His 6 books is where he came with the concept of all melanated people coming from Africa. And so instead of us being recognized as being indigenous here, he was the one like, nope, we're gonna say they come from Africa. They came from slave ships. We're gonna keep pushing this ideology. Okay, yeah. Plecker's actions were part of a broader movement in the United States during the early 20th century we already read that. I think, did you read that? No, you
I don't think. No,
okay.
I ain't let me read it.
I got it. I got you. Plecker's actions were a part of a broader movement in the United States during the early 20th century to enforce racial purity and uphold white supremacy. Plecker's policies had devastating consequences for Moor Americans and indigenous communities, as they were denied access to resources and rights afforded to French, Dutch, British citizens. Excuse me. His actions also contributed to the insurance of more Americans and Indigenous identities and histories, perpetuating a legacy of discrimination and marginalization. I got Plecker's picture up here. It's the wrong picture. But anyway, Hrdlicka was a Czech-American anthropologist known for his works. Let me go back. Let's discuss this real quick. Let's go back here. Plecker's policies had devastating consequences for the Moor. I want you to understand what I'm reading right here, because this is where this is how our resources got took from us. Plecker's policies had devastating consequences for Moor Americans and Indigenous communities, as they were denied access to resources and rights afforded to French, Dutch, British, Irish citizens. His actions also contributed to the insurance of Moorish Americans and Indigenous identities and history, perpetuating a legacy of discrimination and marginalization. And so if y'all familiar with the, what was that, 1890 Oklahoma land rush, I'll share it with y'all in the future, but I did a video on my YouTube channel. It's called Boomer Sooners. I'm from Oklahoma, so it made me wonder like where that concept had came from. And so I started digging into it. And the Oklahoma land rush dealt with the boomers were those who applied through the government for certain land. And the Sooners were the squatters who sat on land. And once they struck the clock at 12, whatever time it was, they would rush for the land. And they just took the land from the indigenous people or took the land from our ancestors. And so Walter Plecker is a part of the ones who gave those resources or gave that land away.
So under what authority do these people have at that time to do this, what they're doing?
This is real. I say slavery. During that time frame, we were going through the Great Depression, or the Great Depression was coming. I also have a video of so-called all-black towns, and there were plenty of towns during the late 1800s, early 1900s, was all so-called black towns. And so we had everything that we needed. I mean, not just Tulsa, Oklahoma, but there was like Free Hill, Tennessee. There's so many towns.
Excuse me, can you mute your phone, somebody? Your computer or phone?
Somebody mic.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had all these towns back then, and so I mean, as I'm gonna go into it later on her, only thing we didn't have, we didn't understand then. Go ahead.
I brought up, got somebody still got a lot of noise in this background, so it's no.
I'm gonna find out who it is. I got you. Hold on.
Yes.
Abdullah, ain't they still using the doctrine of the discovery and the paper bulls as a landmark to say, to keep that, perpetuating that this is why they have these rights?
Yes. Yes. That's the foundation. That's the foundation of their claim, the doctrine of discovery. The paper and the and the paper bulls. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that's what they're utilizing. That's the foundation for all of these other acts that they're committing.
Go ahead and
interjection. I think they also. So I think recently the Pope actually said he rejected all the doctrine of discoveries he actually put forward many years ago. So trying to sort of backtrack at the moment.
So is he doing it in the name of science, or how? I don't understand. How is this like, is people not at the time, the people not aware about this or something? Like, I don't get how they didn't, especially.
You have to remember, if we go back, you have to remember, just go back 16, 17, 1800s. 1600s, we weren't allowed to read the information that they were.
Got you. So that means
Reconstruction
out of the picture, period. So this is under the colored Negro, black color stuff. Okay.
Yes.
During that time. Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's also when they're back from the war, they weren't allowed to. Well, they were allowed to have weapons, but they didn't like the idea of Moors having weapons, being trained from being out of the army, being successful and having their own town and so forth. So anything they could do to hinder the success and development economically and politically with Moors, they would always bomb Oklahoma, mortgages, they can't get mortgages, that sort of thing. Those sort of things to hinder your growth. And I think also with the West Young Man, the program was to bankrupt the Freedmen's Bureau and say, okay, we could give all the lands to the Europeans coming over and give them land grant colleges to help them farm and give them money. So that the bankers actually help them do things, develop, and take away lands from indigenous people like more. So, you know, it's disgusting what happened, but we're under occupation. They're using the suspend the constitution by using the doctrine of discovery, then suspend that, and then have the doctrine of necessity to justify what they want to do. So you have a lot of work to do.
But we also got to remember language came in as a key element. That's when they started changing. When we looking at the etymology of words that through the education system, the part of that was to change up the language and to add different and many definitions onto the etymology of the sense of the word. So you wouldn't know that's how they're talking in code, so that you can't pick up nothing of what they're talking about. And this is where they try to make everybody a lawyer, right? That's where the barristers and all these different people come in at, because they say that you don't have a right to practice law.
Hold on, King, please. It's that it's kind of challenging to hear you because of the
somebody in the background.
Yes, it's because you're dropping some good Jews, brother. So just
Go ahead.
all right.
Okay. So when we look at the etymology, it's gonna be hard for me to say. I still got the noise in the background.
Yeah, it's too much. It's very distracting.
Somebody, it's like right when you talk, they come on. They don't say nothing.
I just muted it again.
So this is why we got to understand the hijacking of the education system and the etymology of words. They started to manipulate the words. That was one of their ways of suppressing us, right? Through the changing of language, through all of these different processes. And then they brought in the barristers, and now we have a system of law where they're saying that you can't practice law without a license because it's all codified. Now they brought in another legal sense, another system of language called legalese. And this is another form of suppression, of oppression, to strip you of an ability, right, to be able to make certain claims, because now they're controlling. That's another way of controlling the language, controlling the language in the education of everyone, so that they can always say they got the superior claim. When you examine all of these different things, what we're doing, we're making discoveries. These are things that we're going to be able to use in a legal reference points. These are discovery matters, tools that we're using now to show the calculation, the malicious acts that they use in order to oppress us. And now we can show through this process, through this community outreach, look at everything they're doing. They can't say this was happenstance or this by coincidence. We now can see the heinous calculation and every element in what they did to strip us through this, to utilize this system, so now they can say that we're the landlords. The Moors abandoned this. Now they to classify as Black, Negro, or color, to now make us tenants, so that we always can be taxed.
That's
Indeed,
why I didn't want to get.
Islam.
That's why I wanted to get that noise under control because I know King was going to drop it. I knew he was going to drop it.
I saw somebody had their hand raised.
Yes, peace.
So,
It's
sorry,
Brother
Joe.
King. Peace. I wanted to add also that I was upset. I was upset. I knew I had an inkling as a child just based on my physical observations of my father, even based on the kind of the constructive and the Hollywood Indians, quote unquote, or the Hollywood natives that they show us in everywhere. And I asked my mother, and then got into it, and then I found out that down in Mississippi, they're from Natchez, where Mississippi does business. I should say they got 500-600 acres down there, and I was wondering why I was upset with some of the elders in the family. Like, why aren't they talking about this? And I come to find out from my aunt, she told me that you couldn't talk about a lot of that stuff either. The churches were once a sanctuary where our people could go to talk about political issues or things that were going on in the community. But, you had people inside the church. Now, this is based on passed on knowledge from my aunt. So I wondered, I had that same kind of like, why weren't they talking about this, during certain time periods? And some of that was because, some of our people were, depending on where they were under pressure, and, they kind of kept quiet about some things because they didn't want to have retaliation, which is part of the reason why my family my father was actually born in the living room of the house that we are at, but they came up here from Mississippi to kind of escape the Klan and some of the things that were going on down there. And so those have been passed on. But I wanted to interject that also under threat of bodily harm. Some of our people, they kept quiet about some of the things and the connections and the ties to the land that they had for their own protection. I'm not saying, I'm not making a judgment on them either way, but that's been my experience from talking to some of the elders. Peace.
Go ahead, Brother Charles.
Islam, I was just about to interject and agree with the brother talking about the law and the way it's been portrayed as legalese and making sure that people can't understand the Latin of law. Going back to my parents, born in Czech-American, Grenada, my uncle, I had Abdullah's book in Grenada, I was on holiday, was talking about etymology. And my uncle said, well, they used to teach etymology at school, and they suddenly stopped teaching etymology at school. I just said to my uncle, that's because if you had etymology, you'd be able to have the root of the word and able to decipher the word. And obviously, if you can decipher that, it can't hold you in ignorance and tell you things you know are not true.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'll say. The other thing that was mentioned before is keeping people in a certain degree of ignorance is also a class of genocide if it's part of their culture, or trying to keep them in a certain category all the time. But no one mentions that. I think El Haj Malik mentioned that about the United Nations and so forth, about genocide and how they were treating Moors and calling them Negroes and that sort of thing. That's all I'm saying. The last thing we're doing now is educating people and freeing people. Because once you know something, it can't be taken away from you once you know something and you're educated. Islam Moors.
Islam. All right, so anybody else?
Akono, I just want to say good job. I really like this presentation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, going in more. Like I said, Alex Hrdlicka was a Czech-American anthropologist known for his works in physical anthropology and human evolution. In the early 20th century, Hrdlicka conducted research on indigenous people and on indigenous peoples of the Americas, particularly focusing on their physical characteristics and origin. And so that's something else that Francis Bonner was that's how he came up with the concept of race, black, white, yellow, brown, red, etc., was based on the physical characteristics. Dark skin, pale skin, fair skin, etc. high cheekbones, low cheekbones, etc. One of Hrdlicka's theories, influenced by prevailing racial theories of his time, was that the modern peoples of America, today's modern Native Americans, were descendants of Asian population. He believed that they migrated from to the Americas from Asia via a land bridge that once connected Siberia to Alaska during the last ice age. Hrdlicka's theory challenged earlier ideas that some indigenous peoples of the Americas, particularly those with darker skin and African features, were of African descent, Melville Herskovitz. By proposing an Asian origin for Native Americans, he contributed to shaping the understanding of the peoples of the Americas among anthropologists and scholars. And so again, Hrdlicka was the one who proposed the Asian, the Mongolian descent to be the so-called Native Americans we see today. And so as the brother was saying, like you see in Hollywood, you had Iron Eyes Cody. You know what I mean? He was a foreigner, but they used him as the image of the so-called native. However, it is essential to note that Hrdlicka's theories were influenced by the racial ideologies prevailing during his times. And so again, Francis Bernard, Carlos Linnaeus, Franz Boas, Melville Herskovitz, and many others. So they were taking these concepts that were already being written into these books that are already being practiced and using them and keeping this race concept going. How did people start thinking that we were, how did race or color start identifying with skin pigmentation? Today, the prevailing scientist consensus is that the indigenous peoples of the Americas are descendants from ancient Asian populations, but have diverse genetic and cultural backgrounds shaped by millennia of migration, adaptation, and interactions. My questions for tonight is, why the Moorish nationality or national identity? With a lack of knowledge, it prevents us, but with the knowledge, what would it give us? It would give us the most leverage. It ties, like I said, like we said earlier, like Brother King, Abdullah, Quasi, and many others have said, it ties us back to our land, we being the landlords over our state. And so this is why the Moorish nationality or national identity is most important, because it ties us back to our land and our state. With the continued indoctrination and false identities, we don't see ourselves in treaty protections versus Constitution or the treaties, because with a false identity, we are not able to see ourselves through our Moorish forefathers and mothers who civilized the world. We do not think like a nation or in the mental of national principles like how other nations who know their nationality. Like if you were to ask a Chinese, a Mexican, French, etc., I'm from Guatemala, I'm from Honduras. I mean, they know their nationality. But you have Chinese restaurants, you got Chinese food, Chinese flag over here. You got Mexican restaurants, Mexican food, Mexican flags over here. You have French toast, French fries, French people over here, etc., you know, but we don't know governmental structure. As I was saying earlier.
One question, if I may. So Mexican is a nationality?
Say it again.
Mexican is a nationality?
No, I was just as a people. I mean, like I said, Guatemalan, Honduras,
okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like ETC.
Okay, got you.
But I mean, but you do, they have a flag though. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Black, we don't have a flag.
I do notice that. And they got a government as well, right? But it's still, but it's under still, is it it's still a de facto government though, right? Or
yes.
Okay.
But as I was saying earlier, as the brother was saying earlier, like we have everything in our community just like we did during the Tulsa Race Massacre, during the New York 1863, during Chicago in 1919, Memphis in 1866, and many others. I mean, we had nurses, farmers, doctors, electricians, engineers, fishermen. We have this 2024. We have everything we need in our community. Only thing we're missing that they were missing back then is the understanding of nationality and national principles as they apply to nations or common unity, a community. This is why other nations should come over here and build communities, because they understand nationality and national principles. They understand it takes them to build what they need. A lot of our people steady asking for handouts. We waiting on somebody to come do for us. But like Brother Quasi, he out there doing the work. You know what I'm saying? Like I'll be out there in the community doing the work as well. I'm gonna start uploading photos as well. But I commend brothers and sisters who are out there in the community doing the work. But having the Moorish nationality or the Moorish identity would enable us to grow fundamentally and nationally. Then we could place ourselves to our connection to our resources. Because now we're talking about political structure. But the legal fictions of Black, Negro, colored people, people of color, African American, etc., the generational mass dehumanization and denationalization of the Moors, or Black Moors, or tiny Moors. So these legal fictions are what's hindering us. And when you look at most applications, it says no discrimination based on race, color, or national origin. Francis Bonner, Carlos Linnaeus, Johann Friedrich Blumenbach. Race, color. You never see nationality on there, so we can't even connect to that because we don't see it. But you always see these three on the form, in the EEOC, civil rights, or any other forms that you look at. And so, as I asked earlier, how did the word color become associated with skin tone or complexion? What was the source of this? Francis Bonner, Carlos Linnaeus, Johann Friedrich Blumenbach. And that's my presentation for tonight. We have any questions? Any more questions? Anybody want to add on?
Yeah, so it's me. I just wanted to say, right, like for my state in Massachusetts, I know that I am going to present to the governor, well, the acting governor, because as L's and Bays, we're actually the governors, to add to the applications nationality, you know, and make that a, would that be like a clause or the law, basically the supreme law? And so that's something that I would do within my own state, and you know, maybe for other folks, they can add that to the other. So.
Go ahead.
I was just going to agree with this, the Empress there about what she's doing in her state, because we're doing the same thing in United Kingdom at the moment. Because obviously no one speaks about the Moors and so forth. We're doing a lot of charity work, outreach, talking about the Moors and the states over in America, and being descendants of Moors born in America, in the UK, we need to obviously add that nationality to our forms and so forth. So we're in the middle of talking to the mayor about it. I was elected a councillor of a town in the UK as well, so working through the government structure through the Labour Party over here as well. So that needs to be pushed as well.
Okay.
It's basically it's education. That's all it is. Just education.
Just a second. Hold on.
Somebody else about to say something? Okay. We have the conference coming up May 18th. If y'all, I'm sure y'all are aware of that. What is it? $125 for your tickets. Are the hotels still available, Abdullah? Are the rooms still available? He might have stepped off. He might have his mic muted.
I'm not for sure if he's still.
Okay. Let me see.
It's like, I kind of asked you a good question while you're still on.
Yeah, no, I don't think I don't see him. But I don't know if there's room still available. But also, like me and Brother Quasi was also saying, if anybody needs help or needs like help getting to the event, let us know in advance, and if we have any funds we can scrape up, we can help y'all get there. We can put some of what y'all got to make that happen.
Right.
Can you hear me at the moment? Or
Yes.
yeah. It's a quick question with the overseas policy. What was Moors doing with the overseas Moors who wants to come over, say from Germany or UK or whatever? What's the status of that connection at the moment?
That I don't know.
Yeah, I think it will be, you will have to go find some kind of treaty that they have or some kind of document like that they have, some kind of allegiance or whatever.
Yeah, we have a lot. We found a lot in Abdullah's book. I was trying to get hold of Abdullah for that because I'm back on my way back to the UK and next Tuesday. I was hoping to meet up with Abdullah before that to get some books signed, have a conversation before I fly off. But I know he's busy, so when I can get a message to him, I'm happy to go to Philly or wherever. If that could be arranged, I'd appreciate it. To the presentation over. Akun, I'd like to thank you for your presentation.
Hey, I appreciate y'all giving me y'all time.
Absolutely.
No, it's needed. It's needed. We appreciate it.
I'm still a student at this, so I mean, like, I appreciate y'all. Like I say, give me y'all time. I'm still a student, so I'm still learning as we build, as we grow. But
right.
I'm looking forward to building with y'all and possibly meeting y'all on the 18th or meeting those that make it to the event.
Absolutely.
And
Miguel,
just to give the brother, hi, my name is Rasiri Azel. I think in the chat it has me down as Manaj Rael. But to give a little insight to the brother that's dealing with certain things in the UK, a lot of those, for lack of a better word, city or even the country in itself, when you trace a lot of that back, even as far as the Bretones and all of that, you'll find different treaties, even coming from the Treaty of Grenada and Spain. So it's still a lot because the original European power was us. So when you get into that, you'll find a lot of our history there as well, because the European powers at one time was us.
Yeah, there's a lot of Moorish treaties and so-called Blackamoor stuff going on in the UK. There's loads, even flags and sort of thing. Ireland, Sicily, all parts of Europe. So that's there. Even the modern like Rishi's book with modern European book.
Yeah.
Modern European, sorry, yeah, that one. There's loads. Even our brothers touched on some treaties for Tripoli and so forth. Great Britain and Morocco and the ships, that sort of thing, where they should pay to be on the sea, basically. So we sign it all in.
And a lot of them, they're like almost every one of them, their origin is from us. You know,
yeah, definitely, 100%.
Yeah, especially like Russia. Russia is a mixture. It's another mixture. It's almost like Mexico in a sense when you get into the history of Russia. So all of those
the Etruscans and Prussians.
Prussia.
Right. And when you look into to get into one of Ad books as well, if you look into the book that deals with all the nations' flags and their armaments and all that, you'll find all those crests with those Moorish pictures and Moorish heads and all that. You trace all that back, it's all still us. Even King George and all of that. You get to a certain point, you find out their lineage and they're all us.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And even the Queen, before she died, she said that her lineage is traced back to Islam. Yeah, she won't say more, but she says Islam.
Yeah, I think the closer they got to say more was Queen Charlotte, because she's the one who did there's a massive flower show called Kew Gardens Chelsea Flower Show in Kew Gardens, and it was Queen Charlotte actually started that.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of things they don't talk about, but they display.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I appreciate you, bro.
Islam.
Thank you, brothers.
Like I said, I appreciate everybody. I'll be doing a touch up on this on April 11th. So I'm looking forward to everybody on that one. It's
Absolutely.
been great, man. Like I said, I thank y'all.
Yeah, thank you, brother.
Peace. Great presentation, bro. Keep it up, man. Peace.
Excellent.
Yes, very good.
Yeah, peace.
Islam.
Thanks for your time again. Islam.
Islam.